Okay, so we are live. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this special episode of the monthly Privacy Live. Is privacy becoming the new standard in 2026? Today, we do have some amazing guests, panelists, and hopefully, we're going to be deep diving even more into privacy. How does the compliance work within it, and also what type of use cases and what kind of blockers are currently blocking privacy from becoming a standard within Web3. So I let the speakers introduce themselves and also the company that they represent in brief. So whoever would like to start, just jump in.
Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you. So, Jim, everyone. So I'm Nathan. Chief Ecosystem and Revenue Officer at iExec. Basically, iExec has been shipping TE-based confidential computing since 2017. Before privacy was even a real conversation in DeFi and real topic into the Web3 world. And today, we bring verifiable privacy on-chain directly to finance, trying to break out without breaking the composability. So excited to be here with you guys to talk about this hot topic.
Thanks, Nathan. Amateo, go ahead.
Yeah, I am Amateo, CMO at COTI, and you might know us. We've been around for a while. We're a legacy project, but several years ago, we really went all in on privacy, and that turned out to be a pretty prescient strategic decision for where privacy is today. We have our own privacy mainnet, which is powered by garbled circuits, which is one of the unique approaches that you can take to privacy. And we are working to onboard enterprises and AI builders to use our network and enable privacy-based computation and transactions.
Thanks, Amateo. Henri, it's your time to shine.
Hey, I'm Henri. I'm VP product at the Starknet Foundation. And so the Starknet Foundation is the foundation that supports Starknet, a layer 2 on top of Ethereum. Starknet is ZK rollup. It's pretty much the only ZK rollup that is still alive in the Ethereum landscape at this stage. We're pioneers in the world of provable computation and, in general, zero knowledge proofs. The main entity developing Starknet, the network, is called Starkware. The co-founder of Starkware, Eliben Sasson, is also co-founder of Zcash. So for a very long time, Starknet has been focusing on using proofs mostly with the angle of scalability of blockchains. This is now a solved problem. I mean, this is something we've worked on. We have very good results now, and so we're looking at how we can use it for privacy these days.
Thank you, Henri, and thank you again for all the speakers for joining us. So I think it's the time to dive into the core subject, which is all about privacy. And usually how we like to start off the conversation is to ask the basic question, like why is privacy becoming a trend? Like we're seeing CZ, Vitalik, everyone talking about privacy right now, like thought leaders, founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, etc., vouching for privacy, integrating privacy into their roadmap. And also when it comes from a technical point of view. So in your opinion, like what changed, what became so central for privacy to become the center of 2026 as a trend? If you'd like to start, maybe Nathan?
Yeah, sure. Definitely 2025 ended with a hot topic, which is privacy, of course. We saw the run of many altcoins and that. But I think privacy did not grow because just the Web3 market and cypherpunk got louder, but really because institutions showed up that need for coming on chain directly. So it's not just a new narrative based on big fundraising and the retail starting to be greedy, but because really people understood that it's needed for the traditional finance to come on chain in terms of infrastructure rails, I would say. So we saw that, for example, BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, and other big companies started to tokenizing assets, And for that, I think they understood that the problem became obvious in terms of they can't expose their business logic and any public sensitive data to the real world. So probably this is why it became suddenly central, and it's become also necessary for a lot of people and not just optional for just a feature switch on privacy. So I think that's really how as well, but I think we will speak of that later, but how this market also could grow in the future as well, because we needed something that really could change the whole aspects of what we're building and why and for who as well. And we could have right now a good vision on who is asking the privacy or coming on chain.
Thank you. Really, really nice answer. Amateo, would you like to jump in?
Sure. So last year there was a convergence of a few points, which is one, you finally had enough regulatory clarity, at least in the United States, but more so, also happening throughout the world, where people were starting to have a bit more confidence in being able to utilize the blockchain. And you also had at that time, as Henry was saying, like the scalability of blockchain being secure and solved, and that all of a sudden, if I'm an enterprise, I'm an institution, I can go, okay, I can do this in a legit way. And I can do this in a regulated environment. And so you got like have all these boxes that you have to tick if you're an enterprise or an institution. And then they go, okay, well, is the technology secure? And then they looked at that and said, oh yeah, it's actually secure. And they said, okay, is it scalable? Yeah, it's scalable. And they said, okay, can how fast can we do this? Okay, we can actually do it really fast, and we can use AI to do it even faster, and we can still have engineers audit the code. Okay, great. What about all of our clients' data? Oh, that's going to be on chain. That's going to be visible. That's going to be transparent. Shit. And so this was like the big thing that kind of all came to at the end of last year. And this is something that we saw coming, and we had anticipated, and so did other builders and the people who are on this call. We knew that this was coming. We knew that at some point there was going to be a huge barrier that these enterprises and institutions were going to have to cross. And the actually obscuring of sensitive data is a big piece of this. And if you're a marketer like I am, you know that if you do any marketing in Europe, like GDPR is this like crazy thing that you always have to be accommodating of. And in that case, it's like tons of sensitive data management tools. And that's not even like there's all sorts of issues with how that's handled and their access to things. But like you understand that sensitive data is really, really critical on every level of the operational stack. The user data, account balance data, the company's data. And then if you're actually going to be doing like any kind of advanced computation or function or business practice, you don't want to reveal your IP. You don't want to reveal how you're doing what you're doing. You need to protect all of that on chain. And that's where the reality of privacy becoming non-negotiable, absolutely essential and non-optional started. And now everyone has come to realize that this has to be solved. It has to be programmable, and it is going to be required for them to actually make the leap on chain. And that's what I think all of us are working to solve.
Loving the answer, honestly. Amazing input. Henry, if you'd like to jump in.
I don't have much to add. I think everything's been said. People being less likely to go to prison, institutions wanting to partake and not being copy traded every corner, and then the infrastructure being ready to handle it. That boils down to this. Very good insights.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So that brings us to the second question or second topic. So most of these DeFi players, including us here in this room, are focusing like when it comes to privacy with DeFi. So in your opinion, like what does privacy actually solve when it comes to DeFi? Who would like to start? I think we can mix it a bit, maybe Henry.
How much do you have on your bank account, Ricardo?
Oh, that's
Why do you not
maybe
tell me? You should be comfortable telling me.
um,
See, I mean, the question answers itself, right? I mean, why should DeFi be private? We're going to look back at today and the state of the industry in the past few years is like, were we crazy? Everything was visible and we are still doing that, right? Just like today, you go on a website and you like, if there's no certificate, it tells you, hey, you're in an unsafe place. Tomorrow or in the future in DeFi, it will be by default. Things will be more private because the industry and the standards will grow. So I think your financial information shouldn't be public, period. So I think that's the main that's one of the main guarantee. I think I'm French, so he's Nathan, so he's probably familiar with what I'm going to say. But there has been several stories of kidnapping over DeFi and holding crypto assets in France over the past few months. That's a very clear reason why you wouldn't want to broadcast how much you have on whatever ledger you have at home or wherever. So I think just wanting to own your asset, own them privately without having to answer to the general public is something that is generally desirable for most of the population.
okay. Thank you, and thanks for scaring me also. Really nice. Like I'm working actually with French people, and I love how direct they are. Like, most of the time they do put me in this kind of situation, and I actually like it. No filters. Thanks, Henry, by the way, for the amazing answer. If somebody would like to jump in, Amateo.
Sure. I love that, by the way, Henry. I mean, it's like so direct, right? Like it's just like piercing. That's the truth, though. I don't want you to know. And so like I think the reality was that the pseudo anonymity of Bitcoin was something that gave people a lot of comfort before people started doing business and actually being really involved in using the technology. Because all of a sudden, if you're trying to build a Bitcoin business, or let's just say any of these other assets, you're trying to build a personal brand, and you have wallets that you're taking money from, or you're using, or you want to expose this huge security risk. So I agree with Henry that we're going to look back at this and go, "Oh my God, I cannot believe that we were so reckless, and that we thought that that it was complete openness was the answer for everyone, because the holes are being exposed." But let's break this down a little bit. So, private DeFi, of course, there's some standard things like payroll. The payroll problem's been talked about a lot recently. There is the actual trading, and Henry alluded to this too, which is the copy trading thing. You can guarantee that the hyperliquid whales don't actually want all of their positions exposed. This is not something that they desire. They don't want to be copy traded. They don't want all of their different decision making to be revealed. That can also be ill-fated in the case of like James Wynn and others who get real cocky, and people know whose wallets there are, and there's a rush to actually liquidate you, and there's enough market momentum to do it. So this is a huge problem. You can also actually look at yield pools and yield pool stabilization that happens, and how that is a huge attack vector and risk factor. So we got some more information out just this week about Jane Street's alleged involvement in the collapse of Terra Luna. And the moment that happened was actually through a yield and liquidity pool redistribution that was occurring. And it was while they were in that liquidity pool redistribution that they sold out of one of the pools for the first time that money had ever been sold out of that pool. So it was a very directed attack. It was very obvious. They knew what was happening. They knew when it was going to happen. That's not sustainable. And so, when we have this giant yield, staking, what have you, environment, and if any of it's algorithmic or automatically stabilized, this is a huge problem. And you have to obscure this in order to have some of these more advanced financial instruments that people are trying to build on chain. And then you have a whole host of other applications in this regard. we're seeing that messaging isn't as secure and private as we once thought with the current encryption technology. We really don't know how much things are being monitored, and this, now that scalability is solved, a lot of this can come on chain. So you kind of look at DeFi as a whole, and you can pinpoint every application of DeFi, and you can actually see that there's a way that privacy on top of it would improve it and make it more secure.
Yeah, I think we need to also clarify what's the difference between just privacy, like you mean anonymity, and confidentiality. There's absolutely not the same thing. I think what we're guys doing is probably mostly confidentiality than just anonymity, because we understood from like the track record of what Web3 did that the anonymity systems are not what will bring like big funds and big money on chain. So they need to have a compliance systems adapted to that, because all the checkboxes that you mentioned before, they need to validate that before choosing the infrastructure. And I think this is something that confidentiality, like putting on chain with DeFi, is interesting, is because it's bringing economic fairness to actors. When we are doing like finance and trading systems directly on chain, you need to have the asymmetry where it belongs, I mean, to the users, and its privacy restores that. So this is really interesting. And of course, you mentioned Jane Street, and we all seen the thread claiming that big firms manipulated markets by building position, opening shorts, dumping them, triggering liquidation. So I think this is really interesting because we're just talking about what is visible on chain and how people see the intent that the business logic of actors are putting. So if your position, leverage, and basically thresholds are public, you basically becoming predictable to your competitors, but also to the markets. And with predictable, with full anonymity doesn't work, but predictable and choosing what is confidentiality and with who you can grant the access to your data, for example, for the compliance, for the regulation, that is pretty interesting. And it's, I think, could be the missing piece of what DeFi has been building for the last years.
Exactly. Thank you, Nathan. And I think every single day we're reminded of the need of privacy when it comes to DeFi. Like I was just reading before the live Zach XBT's, review or analysis of what has been happening behind the scenes with Axiom Exchange. So imagine if privacy was a standard within this exchange, these wallet addresses wouldn't have been leaked by insider trading, etc. So we do see a lot of this need on a daily basis, and it should become a standard. And also, Nathan did mention currently a really interesting point. Privacy should have compliance by design at the same time. And this brings me to my next topic, which is, in your opinion, how does compliant privacy actually look like currently within the market? Like, what does what works? Who would like to jump in? Maybe Nathan, because we we let you to.
I mean, what works currently or what will work in the future? Because I think the question is not the same in that way.
What's gonna be working? What's the best formula to have the best efficient, scalable product available within the market?
Yeah, I think we all see that the market is becoming, especially when the volatility is high and it's not bull market basically. You're just seeing the market shrinking a bit, and you're starting to think that it could be nice to open bridges to others markets, especially TradFi. And what are the needs that they have to come on chain, and what are the needs to grow this system as well. I think, like, I mean, DeFi, and basically when we're talking about confidential DeFi, needs to be boring enough to scale, I would say. In that way, needs to just not reinvent a lot of things and not just do like basic innovation by adding cool stuff, but that will never be used by builders. It needs just to work and be fully compliant with the actors that will use it. I think that's that's just a moonshot currently from a market perspective. But when we will solve this this piece, that would be very interesting. So I think it's not just a matter of what is the faster privacy solution, what is the execution that has the best system. I think it's more just is the confidentiality directly embedded to the layers and to the system that we're using, and is this one will really attract institutions, protect users as well, and just basically help you to protect your financial and business logic to your competitors, and by being especially easy to use.
Thank you, Nathan. Amateo would love to hear your input on this.
Yeah, so this is how we think about compliance. So we think about compliance very similar to what Nathan said on selective confidentiality, meaning that think about it this way. You can think of it maybe as like 4 different viewers into the data. You've got the public piece, which would be confidential and obscure. You got the user, what you see that you control, that's your information and what's private. You have the platform and what the platform's able to see, kind of based on the things you were just saying on that investigation, what's obscured, what's not obscured. And then you have compliance. And there's a way that outside of the public, all 3 of those have different keys. And based on those keys, it reveals different information and doesn't even have to necessarily reveal the underlying information. That's why we really like the technology of garbled circuits and have leaned into this. For us personally, it's just because what we can do is that we can set up a compliance criteria where an institution knows that their compliance logic is built into whatever platform that is operating that needs to be compliant, and knows that that compliance logic is secured and verified. But then what they can do is they can just get notifications, whether a user or whether a business that's operating within that compliance framework is compliant or not via checkbox. So different regions have different compliance criteria. Sometimes they may need to have access to the underlying data, which can be programmed, or they can just need to be verified one way or the other if something is meeting compliance requirements. And so I think that that's a way that you can think about this, is that it can be extremely well programmed into the actual logic in detail. And then it can still be utilized. I think people get freaked out with compliance and privacy because they think that it just means giving an institution all of their information. And it's actually the opposite. It means being able to verify compliance credentials while still keeping the information confidential. I mean, that's the ideal compliance framework that I hope gets applied all over the place, but ultimately some of them still require some form of access to that underlying data.
Thank you, Amateo. Henri, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really interesting question, because compliance means a lot of different things to different people and in different jurisdictions, right? So it's hard to say what privacy compliant or privacy with compliance is, like what it boils down to. And I think a really interesting aspect of it too is that private finance is inherently a social behavior. If you think about private communications, you don't need a ton of people to use it for you to get the benefit of it. Ricardo, if you and I decide to exchange information, right, and to discuss privately, we don't need everybody else to use the same protocol. We can have our own protocol. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like this in finance, right? If we do this in finance, we can have our own protocol, but if everything is on a public chain and people can see what comes in, what goes out, then they know they can infer a lot of information from what has just happened. So obfuscation, privacy works in numbers when there's more people working. And that means it's a social contract. It's something where everybody has to agree to do the same thing and do things in a similar way. And so I think that there's several ways that this can play out, but inherently, in general, people have other people that they disagree with or that they don't want to be associated with, right? And for various reasons, either because they don't like them, they disagree with them, or because the law prohibits them from interacting with those people. And so you want to give people the ability to do that. And I think we are going to see a bunch of different tools and ways of doing this that will happen. Some of it will be protocols that will be fenced, meaning not everybody will be able to partake in it. That's already what you're seeing with protocols like Railgun, for example, who fences some users from participating based on some threshold to keep the bad guys, bad being relative, but keeping the bad guys out of the pool, right? So you will see enforced privacy. And then you will also see compliance in the form of, oh, well, I'm able to prove that I got this from the pool, but here's the track record, and here's the track record of the person who sent this to me. And so it will boil down to being able to extract your own data from the pool and then prove some link to the rest of your assets, and to prove where the money comes from and who the people you interacted with are. So I believe we're going to see a lot of tooling emerge around that, around how to exploit that data for yourself and supply it in the format you wish, to the authority you wish, depending on who's keeping you accountable.
Okay, thank you. Amazing answer, really, and really interesting input from all three of you. It makes the landscape much easier to comprehend and what we're basically waiting for to shed the light on. So this brings me to another topic, which is actually a trend within the market. We're seeing a lot of people vouch for Ethereum being more scalable than L2s when it comes to transactions per second, when it comes to transaction costs, etc. And we've seen also Vitalik like questioning the presence of L2s if Ethereum is scaling much faster and much better than these L2s. So, in your opinion, what should these L2s bring to the table? What kind of added value should they bring in order to keep up with the current market? And I think this question is quite interesting for COTI and for Starknet, as because they are L2s. And also, Nathan, would love to hear your input afterwards when it comes to the infrastructure side. So, who would like to start? Amateo, maybe? Or
Sure. Yeah, so I think it's a valid point. I mean, I think what Vitalik is really getting at is we don't just need another L2 with a value prop of scalability that doesn't add any real value and actually fractures the user activity on chain, and like it doesn't have any like net. There's a lot of bells and whistles that just sort of happen, and we saw this a lot in like Cosmos ecosystem too, where things would just spin things out like, oh well, it's modular. It's like, well, that doesn't really matter. Like that's not enough. And so I think that that's really what he's speaking to, is just like trying to stop more L2s coming in and being value extractive, but at the same time, like what's the value? So he looks at things. One, which is privacy as being one of the biggest value props that they can add, and in that case, you get to have this dynamic ecosystem of different privacy protocols that are operating in parallel to ETH, that actually can perform different privacy functions for different use cases. But the way that we're thinking about this is actually really leaning into the EVM composability and interoperability, and we're planning to bring garbled circuits to Ethereum natively, and as well as other blockchains that are EVM compatible, to just be a more ubiquitous privacy layer that people can, we call this privacy on demand, and really expanding beyond just our own native chain. So this is something that this is how we're approaching it, because and something that we had already planned for going into this year, because we know that this is necessary, and not every one of these chains necessarily benefits from building an entire privacy stack. But that interoperability is ideal, because there is different ways to solve privacy, and there's ways that these protocols and layer twos can work with each other. So yeah, I mean, they're introducing new privacy standards, and we'll embrace those standards, and it's all net benefit. I actually think for the L2s, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but for the L2s that have solve scalability, have solved scalable privacy, have a unique angle to how they approach this, and have the ability to work natively on Ethereum, it's a phenomenal opportunity, and the ecosystem actually gets a lot closer and less fragmented, and that plus agents actually gets me pretty excited about where all of this goes. That's a different question, but like that's starting to get really good, and I think sets up Ethereum and the L2 ecosystem for a thesis and a narrative driven cycle that we just haven't seen in a long time.
Thanks, Amateo. Interesting answer. Henry, if you'd like to jump in.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's several ways of seeing the question, right? What do L2s bring? What do they bring to whom, right? What do they bring to Ethereum, to the Ethereum ecosystem is one aspect of it. And then what do they bring to the world? What's their value prop is another question, right? I think the main thing that L2s can bring, at least to the Ethereum ecosystem, is diversity and resilience. It sounds stupid, right? But when 65 million years ago, when an asteroid hit the Earth, one of the main things that carried life forward wasn't the dominant life force that was available there. It was a small life form that was a small mammal that eventually led to you and I. And I think that having some options, having different technological paths, some that are quantum resistant, some that are not, some that are using Stark, some that are using Snark, some that are using ZK rollup, some that are using optimistic rollup. All of this is a benefit to Ethereum at large because it is different pathways to success. Not all of them will succeed, but all of them are sort of an insurance for survival. And they bring benefits back to layer one. I mean, look at part of the reason why it is possible now for Ethereum to say, well, layer twos need to be more differentiated because we can take scaling on, is partly because of the learnings of what scaling on L2 have brought to light and that enable layer one to implement some of those changes. So I think that in and of itself is a net benefit. As far as what Starknet will bring to the mix from our side, we see a big Starknet is a ZK rollup, so it was built for being proven and for proving things, right? So the value it has is in being trust minimized and being able to not take my word for it, but being able to be provable anywhere else, right? And there are several ecosystems right now that are siloed from each other and can't talk to each other because they don't trust each other, because they need proof in mathematics. They have different security model. The two biggest one being obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum. That's the problem we want to tackle. We think with proofs we can increase connectivity between chains. We can make provable code default so that you can get lower trust requirement and you can get more collaboration, and that which will make chains provable, which will make Bitcoin composable and usable in the same smart contract environment as Ethereum, is also the toolkit that will enable you to give privacy feature to a bunch of assets who don't have it, in particular Bitcoin, but also Ethereum and a bunch of others. So the way we want to explore that is how do we make programmability something that is available to more chains, and how can we create a substrate that enables people who like Bitcoin, people who like Ethereum to both interact and in a trustless manner. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
It does.
I loved, Henry, I loved what you said, like the fact that a lot of the stuff that Vitalik is posting about is actually the result of the innovation that L2s have created over the course of the past several years that L2s have been building. And I think that's absolutely true. It's like this recursive innovation engine. And it's like, yeah, it's great to say that you can now maybe bring that on ETH, but like then what? Like we're not going to stop innovating and researching and building. You guys aren't either, right?
And I mean, it's a two-way street. It's great that L2s benefit L1. L1s have benefited L2. L1 has benefited L2s for years. I mean, just being able to be secured by L1 is a huge benefit. It brings a ton of advantages to L2s building on top of Ethereum. So it's awesome if we're able to contribute back. It's probably one of the biggest thing we could achieve. It's awesome.
Nathan, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I think on the layer two differentiation point, we had the best answers as possible in the market. So I will more focus on the infra side. I think on the infra side, I mean what they said before is it's basically a virtuous cycle when we are thinking about what the layer two needs, when the layer one needs, what the builders with a build by building application needs based of course on the infra. So I think with like the what we need to have in mind is the better the infra is, the more interesting and sophisticated application we could have on the layers as well, and the more serious the actors and the capital will be as well. And then after that, more developers and more stronger network effect as well. So I think on that topic, we need to think as well what the layers are made for, and specifically in terms of what dedicated application, because we can't have one size fits all. That's not just the point currently, I think. So it's more basically on the execution environment. So it needs to be, as mentioned before, a customizable execution, of course, for the specific needs of the infra, but also it needs to be. I think we didn't mention that enough today. It needs to be composable as well, because liquidity is, of course, too much fragmented currently, and also the way builders are building application. The worst choice that it can make, it's going into not the best technology at the beginning, and then after lose 6 months of development because they didn't choose the best tech at the beginning. So they need to be really flexible in terms of, if I'm going to deploy my application there and my user base will be there and my business model is running on that, I need to make it composable with different environments, because the retail in my user will move from a chain to another chain, but it needs to work on the logic that is pretty much similar. So I think we are both the same. Like, I mean, in our phone, we are using some a little bit less than 10 application daily. When we're talking about on-chain application, could be a little bit less than 10. So it needs to be also composable with what you're building, because imagine if you need to switch from a device to another one, to again another one, to use an application that doesn't match. So it's not based on the cheaper transaction and the faster, but for me, the composability, and which is composability, not the same thing as interoperability.
Thank you, Nathan. This actually brings me to another point, which is the barriers that privacy actually is facing when it comes to adoption. And I'd really love to hear your input when it comes to what are these barriers? Like, is it, the cost, the complexity of integration? Is it composability? I know we did talk a little bit about this in your answers, but I'd love to have, a direct one sentence, like what's stopping privacy from going mainstream as a standard right now?
I'll make a very stupid answer, but I think it's very poorly defined. I think at this stage, just everybody wants privacy, or everybody thinks privacy is great, but defining, oh, this is what is private. Even the notion that Nathan described earlier on, anonymity versus confidentiality versus, like, all of this is lost on most people. And it's even lost on builders. So defining what should be private, why, to whom, and then designing the systems that actually make this work are two different things and they're both unsolved. So I think right now it's mostly that we say privacy, but it's very poorly defined. That's where we should start.
Yeah, I will also add to that the trust, of course, because you can understand really what matters if you have the trust behind. I mean, I can trust the thing only if I can check if the code is what I expected as well.
Yeah, I think my answer to that would be like the theoretical to the practical, meaning that we need a lot more practical use cases and pilot programs that are deployed using privacy. We put a big focus on this so that others can point to this and say, look, it's been done. It was safe, it was secure, it was cost effective. Because then they'll throw resources at the skill gap and invest in it. But it's very hard for these big enterprises and institutions because we finally got them to be like, look, you can run a business, you can move big liquidity, it's all safe. And they're like, oh, okay, we can do that. And it's like, well, they don't have enough examples of actually operating with privacy on chain to give them the confidence to allocate the resources to make the leap. And so we need more of that.
Thanks everyone for the amazing answers. I know we're a little bit, short on time right now, but I do still have one last question. I think it's important. We do like to wrap up these, live streams with, some fun, some alpha, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about like what's the killer use case that's gonna be shown in 2026. What are you hyped about when it comes to the mix of this use case and privacy, and what should the audience or the broader Web3 focus on? So if anyone has some alpha, please do share it.
Yeah, with pleasure. I think the killer app is pretty simple. It's the application that DeFi and real money can actually use. That's all on my side. Not just a demo from shield to unshield assets and then, okay, I'm done. But what can I do next? And is it something that matters in the long term in the way I'm manipulating assets on chain? So this is, yeah, to me the killer app when someone will start to solve that and retail will really start using in retail, but enterprise as well. That's really interesting case.
Thanks, Nathan. Amateo?
Yeah, I like that answer, Nathan. One of mine is definitely private DeFi. I think private DeFi is a huge trend. I don't think enough people are talking about it. I think they will. We're working to bring privacy to Privx, which is like a perps platform that runs on COTI later this year. We're just very excited about the use cases and the builders. I would say that the thing that I'm like most bullish on is the crypto community going from token holders to builders thanks to vibe coding and like what the innovation cycle is going to be as all of this becomes realized, and then privacy becoming something that's easy to build with versus something that's so hard to achieve, is the thing that I'm really excited about, and that's something that we're really focused on is bringing our privacy technology not only to more chains but to AI tooling to have secure builds and empower builders.
Yeah, I think I'll double down on this. I think privacy is not a product, it's a feature. And so the killer privacy use case will be a killer product that is private by default. Nobody thinks of WhatsApp as being a private messaging app, yet it is. It is using the Signal, the same protocol as Signal is. So I think privacy will make a huge breakthrough when an app is great, compelling, easy to use, it has success, and it's private. But it's not the main value prop. It's just the way it is, and that will come once we have toolkits and patterns that are easy to understand, easy to plug in, and well understood. So and that people can trust because they know the math behind it is safe. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you, Henri. Really amazing answer. And this brings us, unfortunately, to the end of our live stream, the session. Just to mention to everyone that you should follow COTI, Starknet, and iExec, and also at the same time, all the speakers are mentioned within the post. So if you're a builder and a project who's interested in integrating somewhat their solution or technology, please do send them a message. I do think they're more than happy to answer you. And again, if you're interested in privacy, these are privacy providers. Check their tech, see what's best. Again, there's no superior privacy technology. There's only privacy tech that works best with different specific use cases. So we're all friends, we're all similar. And again, thank you so much to all the speakers here. Thank you to Henri, Amateo, and Nathan for joining us today. And I hope everyone liked the session.
Thank you, Ricardo, for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for hosting, Ricardo.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, tuning in.